Hi everyone. This is What If Fan. This is one of the new 4 ongoing fanfics that will be updated regularly. Today's story is, What If Ichigo Had a Different Zanpakuto? You can find the fanfic name and author in the description below. Please make sure to support the original author. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe to the channel. Alright, let's get started. Chapter 1, Embrace the Storm. Kurosaki Ichigo flinched as the crack boom ripped through the night, cutting across the loud pelting sounds of falling rain. Beside him, his mother put a hand on his shoulder and gave him one of her famous sunny smiles, despite the miserable evening. There, my little man. The lightning won't hurt you. The orange-haired boy was wearing a yellow raincoat so that his mother didn't have to risk the umbrella not covering her fully. Ichigo couldn't help but smile back. I know. It was just really loud. His mother's giggling was music to his ears. The sky could be pitch black. Thunder could be rumbling and lightning striking. It could be an utterly miserable day, but his mother's smile never failed to cheer him up. So how did it go today? Masaki asked him curiously. Was Tatsuki being mean again? The two of them were walking home from his karate classes that day. He let out a little groan. Tatsuki still won. He almost playfully grumbled. He'd yet again suffered a defeat by his best friend, but he felt that maybe soon he could get a win too. I think I'm a lot better now though. Tatsuki-chan is still mean though. He grumbled, recalling how she yet again knocked him onto his butt. Masaki giggled lightly. So you're getting better? It's good that you've been having fun, my little man. She lowered herself down a little, and put a gentle kiss on his forehead. Keep up the hard work and you'll be able to win against Tatsuki in no time. Ichigo closed his eyes as he smiled happily. They resumed walking and talking animatedly, but when he happened to look to the right something drew his attention. A little girl was standing by the raging river, looking longingly into it. They resembled rapids more than the calm waters he walked by every day. He could hear them roaring even from as far away as he was. Ichigo's eyes went wide. Didn't she realize she was in terrible danger? One wrong step and she would fall in. When he had been even younger than he was now, he had heard his father say the true meaning of his name. Some of the meaner kids at school claimed that it meant strawberry, but Ichigo knew the truth. He was his namesake, a protector. That was why he took his lessons. So, he could keep his mom and sisters safe. When he saw someone in mortal peril, he didn't even stop to consider the consequences. He just took off yelling, "Hey! You could fall in. Get away from the river." Ichigo, no! Masaki yelled and ran after him. Her eyes widened as she saw what her little boy had seen. But she saw far more. She could see the little line of green flesh sticking out of the girl's head. Ichigo didn't stop, and the water erupted. Ichigo's eyes widened in terror as a giant, hamster, thing, with a white mask burst from the river, mouth wide open and descending on him. It was covered in matted down green fur and had tiny red limbs. Water started splashing down as Ichigo trembled, able to see another smaller set of teeth down its gullet. He backed up and started to fall, and just before he could scream as it started to chomp down, he experienced a great sense of vertigo. Mom? He gasped as his vision corrected itself. He wobbled precariously as he realized the two of them were now far away from the river. Ichigo looked back and saw the creature howling angrily as it tore a chunk from the earth. Mom, what? Hush, baby. His mother kissed him gently. We'll talk in a little bit, my little man. It'll all be over soon. He watched as his mother's face hardened, a look he had never seen grace her features before. Still stunned, he watched as a bright light erupted from her left hand and formed into an ethereal-looking bow. The creature had started rushing over to them, roaring furiously. Its howl was so loud it made Ichigo cringe, though his mother stood steadfast. She raised the bow and in her other hand, an arrow formed through some blue energy. Ichigo watched in awe as she knocked it before her head snapped up and she looked to the sky. Before she could react, a bright beam of light engulfed her as the monster slid to a stop. Her bow and her arrow dissolved, and she showed signs of fear for the first time. What? Her head snapped to the monster, which had resumed its charge, Ichigo. She screamed as she turned and dove on top of him. The monster descended. An older Ichigo sprang out of bed, throwing his sheets almost across the room. He was covered in sweat and panting like he had run a marathon, his eyes wide with panic. Slowly, he recognized his room as his breathing slowed. He let out a troubled groan, hands going up to his head and pulling at his hair with tight fists. He clenched his teeth before smashing one into the side wall, regretting it immediately as his hand began to throb. He exhaled slowly as he gripped his now tender fist and got up, grabbing his sheets, and getting back into bed. That damn dream again. He sighed as he looked at his alarm. 3:30 in the morning. He closed his eyes in frustration. He called it a dream, but a memory would have been more accurate. He still wasn't sure he believed what he had seen. Since that fateful day when his family had lost their shining star, Ichigo had come to learn that he could see things no one else could see. When he was younger, he had thought he might have been imagining things. He had cheerfully spoken to a little girl about his age years ago, only for others to ask him why he had been talking to himself. But as time went by, Ichigo started to see the truth. He could see spirits. The dead. A bloodied man had shown him the truth. There was no way that man could live with that much blood outside his body. The mangled arm didn't help either. Ichigo had learned that the man had died in a car accident. Neither of them could say why he had a chain on his chest either. After that revelation, Ichigo had made sure to pay closer attention to who he was talking to. It wouldn't do to think a dead person was alive and attempt to introduce them to his friends. But even with the knowledge that he could see spirits, he still didn't believe his memories. That day couldn't possibly have happened the way it had. Ichigo had bumped his head pretty hard when his mom fell on him and he had convinced himself that he had been seeing things. Spirits were one thing. Monsters and his mom having magic powers were an entirely different thing. He had never told anyone what he had seen. Convinced himself that his mind had made it up. Made it all up, so that he could forget the horror of the brightest light in his life being extinguished. Anything to escape from the anguish he felt when his unmoving mother's body lay on top of his. And yet the nightmares wouldn't leave him alone. It was as if something didn't want him to forget. They had just seemed so real. He cursed to himself, feeling nasty and sticky. He flung the covers off his body and got up for another shower. He probably wouldn't be getting back to sleep anytime soon anyway. It had taken a very, very long time for Ichigo to be convinced that his mother's death hadn't been his fault. Even while denying the memories he held of the event, the one thing he knew had happened was that he had run after that girl. The vivid nightmares he had over the years had more than shown him the truth. He had been worried for his spirit. His mom had died because he hadn't been able to recognize the fact that the girl had already been dead. And that had been a bitter, nasty pill to swallow. Like any who suffered from survivor's guilt, he had believed it was his fault mom had died. His fault their dad would never hold her in his arms again. His fault that his precious sisters would never see her sunny smile again. It hadn't been immediate. Some days he hoped he would wake up and his mom would be there. That it had all just been a really bad nightmare. But time had gone by, and Ichigo was forced to face the truth. She was really gone, and she was never coming back. He stopped crying as often, feeling more and more dead inside. Rudeness started to seep into his voice. He stopped respecting many adults, especially when he started to see in their eyes that they thought he was bad just because of his hair. His temper started getting the better of him. Where once he would have cried his eyes out at an older student insulting his hair, now he retaliated. He started coming home with bruises and scrapes. Then he started sending them home with what they once gave him. He started being distant with everyone but his sisters and sometimes his goof of a father. Tatsuki began to worry for him, but he just closed off. They began talking less, though not from lack of effort on her part. He started to wear an almost permanent scowl and started gaining a reputation for fighting. He started becoming nothing like the happy child his mother saved, and every nightmare he had just made it worse. It was a lonely and self-destructive mindset to have, and after almost a year of surly attitude and depression, his father seemingly turned into a different person one day. He had never seen his father in anything but a jovial mood. Not even during Mom's funeral had Kurosaki Ishin worn a defeated look on his face or a cloud over his head. And that more than anything had made Ichigo sit down and listen. It was only after their talk that Ichigo realized the truth. His dad had just barely been holding it together, putting on a front to keep some semblance of normality in their lives. To see him so incredibly serious without a hint of bravado had been so out of character that Ichigo had been forced to listen. Ichigo. His father knocked on the door. Yuzu and Karen were at a playmate's house, so it was only them inside the house. Ichigo looked up from where he had been laying, doing nothing more than staring at the ceiling, with a somewhat raised eyebrow. The very fact that he had been allowed to lay there without his goofball of a dad play attacking him like usual was already strange enough. And now the eldest Kurosaki was knocking at his door? What game was he playing now? What? His voice was brusque and gruff at the moment, almost reaching the point of being rude. Just as it had increasingly been since that fateful day. His father opened the door, and his eyes widened as he took in the sight. No smile. Eyes deadly serious. There was an air of authority around the man that made Ichigo stiffen for a moment. He knew he had nothing to fear from his dad, but something set him on edge at the sight and he couldn't figure out what it was. Is that any way to talk to your dad, Ichigo? And like that, the moment was gone. Ichigo went back to being mulish. Ishin sighed and pulled up his rolling chair. It wasn't your fault, Ichigo. No one blames you for what happened. He sat and put his arms and chin on the backrest. You do know that, right? Ichigo stiffened and unbidden, tears started coming to his eyes. What do you know? He spat, lips trembling and throat closing up. You weren't even there. His voice trembled. You didn't even cry when we. He broke down and began to sob. Something that will haunt me to the end of my days. Ishin said evenly. He had been a captain for a long, long time. And not the drill sergeant kind of captain either. He had dealt with a couple breakdowns and insubordination before. Ichigo looked at him and his eyes widened. Ishin's eyes were shiny. Suspiciously so. Ichigo had seen crocodile tears from the man before, but never had his father looked so utterly destroyed. Do you really think I didn't break down, Ichigo? That I haven't cried myself to sleep? Ichigo stared at his father, wide-eyed. If I was constantly turning into a mess, who would take care of you and the girls? Ichigo looked away, completely ashamed of himself. Dad, Son, your mother loved you and your sisters far more than she loved me. Ichigo stared at him dumbfounded and watched as his father smirked. It wasn't a cocky one. No, his father looked as heartbroken as he had ever seen the man look, and let me tell you, before you were born, her happiest day was the day I proposed to her. Ichigo sniffed, eyes red and puffy, and let out a shuddering breath. No one blames you, Ichigo. His dad clapped a hand to his head and started ruffling up his hair. Not me. Not your sisters. And definitely not Masaki. She loved you more than anything but your sisters. He leaned back and said sullenly, Ichigo, a parent's worst nightmare is to one day bury their child. Nothing terrifies any real parent as much as that thought. I can say with 100% certainty that Masaki did not have a single regret. She kept you safe. The way any real mother would do. The same way that I would have done, had I picked you up that day instead. Dad. Ichigo's voice trembled. Come here, son. Ishin said gently as he stood and caught Ichigo as he sobbed into his midsection. I miss her. He bawled brokenly, I miss her so much. I know, kid. Ishin's voice warbled for a moment, and he had to clear his throat. We all do. But she wouldn't want her death to break any of us. I can promise you that. She would give her life for you and your sisters any day of the week. But she wouldn't want to see you close yourself off and push everyone away. She would want you to be happy. It would hurt her more to see you throw away all of your friends. Ichigo stiffened in his arms. She would want you to live, understand? Ichigo sniffled, yeah, and I'm sorry for what? Don't be sorry. He cut his son off, and ruffled his hair again. Be better. I know it hurts. God, I know it hurts. I know how much this was eating away at you. He took his hand off his son's head and gave him a little glare, but you should never take your problems out on others. That's not the son Masaki and I raised. Yes, Dad. Ichigo said contritely. Ishin smiled, good. Just don't let it happen again. And then he was back to Go-chin. Now you better go and apologize to Tatsuki-chan. You've been ignoring her for long enough. And I better not see you moping around anymore, or else Masaki is going to come back to life just to kick my ass. Hey! Ichigo yelled indignantly, what happened to no swearing? Do as I say, not as I do. Ishin declared imperiously. Go-chin! Ichigo yelled irately and tackled his father, who went down into a cackling heap. Days went by, then weeks, and it was to Ichigo's relief that the nightmares had finally stopped. Even if he had finally pushed past the guilt and forgiven himself for his role in his mother's death, reliving it almost weekly, if not more, for almost a year had done nothing but make him hate himself. It was really no wonder that he had turned so gloomy and almost permanently lost his friend Arisawa Tatsuki. The damage to their relationship had almost been irreparable. He really thanked his lucky stars that she had a bigger heart than that. The pummeling she gave him before she forgave him was legendary though. Things started slowly returning to normal. He started sparring with Tatsuki again, though this time he didn't limit himself to just karate. Where before he had joined his class out of a childish sense of wanting to protect his sisters and mother, he now knew what that vow actually meant. He quickly started gaining on Tatsuki's heels even when they limited him to just the one martial art, forcing her to improve just to stay on top. He became focused and driven, and always made sure to spare time for his family and to keep his grades high. He strove to become someone his mother would have been proud of. Things would have been completely normal if it weren't for the elephant in the room. Said elephant currently being the floating middle-aged spirit following him around. Got another one, Ichigo? Yeah. Ichigo groaned as he listened to the spirit babble about some forbidden love or something of the sort. He wasn't sure if Tatsuki actually believed him about the spirits, but she was at least humoring him. He had no idea that she had started to see some strange heat hazes around him at times. She grinned lightly. What is it this time? Waxing poetic about some forbidden love or whatever. He deadpanned and was about to go on when another thing to annoy him appeared. Oh aye. Kurosaki! A loud and boisterous voice rang through the air, making both him and Tatsuki groan. Hideki! Ichigo deadpanned as he turned around, looking at the bully as though he were a bug. Just because Ichigo had regained much of the inner peace he had lost didn't mean he had regained the long fuse he once had. Nor did the older teens and adults stop thinking he was going to be a delinquent. Even now when he consistently placed in the top 5 in his classes, most of the teachers sneered at him when they thought no one was looking. Ichigo sure as hell wasn't about to go back to blindly respecting people who clearly had it out for him. The only thing that changed was that he now had skill to back up his brawling rather than just increasingly absurd strength. My name is Ichiro, ya asshole. Ichiro was a repeat customer of theirs, as it were, and he was currently practically spraying them with spit. Akiyama Ichiro. How many fucking times are you gonna forget it? It's one letter off from your name. Ichigo ignored him, which just got him even angrier. How many did you bring this time? Let's see, 1, 2, 3. 7 high schoolers to beat up a couple of early middle schoolers? Tatsuki had a grin on her face. Man, you guys suck. Shut it, bitch. Tatsuki's eyebrow twitched. I got a bone topic with ya, Kurosaki. The kid had bleached blonde hair and piercings on his face. Not interested. Ichigo said flatly, let's go Tatsuki. He muttered as they turned and started to walk away. Oi, don't you go ignoring me, you hair-bleaching bastard. He ran at Ichigo, looking to pummel him into the ground. Ichigo rolled his eyes and whirled around, dodging around the fist and grabbing the fool's arm. He tossed the bully to the ground and listened as the air left his lungs. Ichiro! The idiot's gang yelled, now you've done it, Kurosaki! They all charged. Tatsuki stepped forward and nailed the leader in the face with a spinning back kick. Not wasting a moment, she nailed another with a roundhouse with her other leg. Ichigo caught a punch and wrenched the arm to the side, creating a major opening. He grabbed the rather dirty-looking teen by the back of the neck with his other hand and brought a knee forward, crashing it into his sternum. The gang member crashed down to the ground, wheezing and practically vomiting. A kick caught him in the side, making him grunt for a moment before Tatsuki smashed her fist into the guy's face, breaking his nose. He spun around and his eyes widened as Ichiro had leapt to his feet, a set of knuckle dusters on his hand. Ichigo caught the arm with his left hand and drilled him in the face with his right. "All right there, Ichigo?" Tatsuki called out as she dropped the last of the gang members and walked over to him. He fell in step with her as they left the gang moaning behind him. "Yeah, I'm fine," he said, cracking his neck carelessly. He was about to continue when a voice rang in his head. "Careless of you, boy. How can you hope to protect your loved ones like that?" His eyes went wide, and he started looking around. Wah! The guys on the ground were still groaning, and the voice certainly had. And sounded like any of them. Was there another spirit around? But the voice didn't sound off again. "You all right, Ichigo?" Tatsuki looked at him in bewilderment. She didn't see any hazes, so there weren't any spirits around. What the hell was he doing? "Nothing," he said, though he sounded unsure of himself. "Let's go. We're going to be late." It took a few months more before Ichigo ever heard that voice again. So long, in fact, that he had actually forgotten about it entirely. "Why am I back here again?" Ichigo groaned to himself. He was aware that this was a dream, but it had been one he had thought and hoped longed on. But there was something different about the nightmare this time. For the first time, he was an outsider looking in, rather than reliving it in his younger self's shoes. He stood on top of a building, being pounded by the rain, and watched himself stroll down the riverside with his mother. It was an outcome he knew. One he had known 1,000 times over. And yet he would not look away. Could not turn and just walk off. He felt more than he knew that he would be able to. But to turn his back on this moment would go against who he was. Damn it all. If only I. If only you what? He jerked and whirled around, eyes going wide as he caught sight of the speaker. And then he looked up. And up. The man smirked down at him. "What's wrong? Never seen a guy before? You're a bit bigger than just a guy." Ichigo blustered, taking him in. He was massive. No, massive might have been an understatement. If Ichigo had to make a guess, he would put the man close to 2.5 meters tall. He was heavily muscular too, though he had a bit too much weight on him for Ichigo to consider him chiseled. He looked more like a strongman than a bodybuilder. He was clad in what looked like leathers and furs, with some kind of armor on his arms. And despite wearing leather armor on his torso and even around his waist, he was still bare-chested, revealing some strange script tattooed all over his exposed body. He was sure that his cloak was just hiding more. To top off the barbarian look, he had red hair, a full, matching beard, and utterly piercing blue eyes. He shook his head. "Great. I'm going insane." "Ha! Jury's out on that." The man laughed at him, "Though I suppose you're right. Few get as big as me." "Hey! You could fall in. Get away from the river." Ichigo turned back around as he heard his younger self call out. Again, he felt that he would be able to go forward, but was there really a point? Even if he saved them here, she was still gone in real life. He heard a grunt from behind him. "Am I really stuck with a coward like you?" he asked, and again his eyes widened. Stuck with him? What did he mean by that? Aren't you strong now? Aren't you going to go save them? Save them from what? He looked at him. This is just a nightmare. Besides, what the hell am I going to do to that giant dash? You? The man took a step forward, and Ichigo wobbled. Have more inside of you than you think. You're only too blind to see it. His eyes glittered as he locked his gaze with Ichigo. We both know you want to rip that thing limb from limb. Go and save her. Wasn't she important to you? Of course, she was. Ichigo spat at him, But what the hell could I even do to that thing? This is just a dream. Maybe. But that doesn't mean dreams can't be real. He replied, and you'll never grow past this nightmare as long as you keep being a coward. He shrugged off his cloak, and Ichigo's eyes zeroed in on the large, ornate hammer hanging from his hip. It had an extremely large head with more of those strange markings carved into it, and the handle looked rather undersized for it. And frankly, he snapped his fingers and the hammer lit up with blue electricity, before flying into his hand. Ichigo was put on guard immediately, shivering slightly. I'm tired of your belly aching. He threw the hammer at Ichigo. Ichigo rolled to the side, and let out a frightened yelp as a loud crash sounded from behind him. He was on the ground, and he looked stunned as he saw the damage to the building they were on. A crater had replaced much of it, and he could hear bricks and mortar crumbling to the ground beneath them. What the hell? Come on, boy! The man yelled, on your feet. Otherwise, I might just crush you. You? Ichigo snarled, getting to his feet and running forward. He leapt, planting his feet in the man's gut in a dropkick. He didn't even budge. Damn it! But the man only laughed, finally. He raised his foot, let's have some fun, boy. He stomped, and Ichigo rolled out of the way. He yelped as the entire building trembled, but got up to his feet and got into his stance. None of that fancy shit, boy. You're like me. His grin was savage as Ichigo unleashed a roundhouse right into his calf. He boomed, oh, it tickled. Is that how you're going to protect your family? Your friends? Your sisters? Ichigo snarled and abandoned his stance, charging forward, that's right. Get angry. You're a storm, boy. Unleash it. Control it. Rarg. Ichigo roared, charging forward and trying to tackle the man. Shut up. He actually managed to get the giant to take a minuscule step back. Ah ha ha. Good. He roared in approval, grabbing Ichigo up like he weighed nothing and tossing him across the roof. Fuck. Ichigo swore as he landed roughly, hitting his forehead and making him feel a bit woozy. He tried to get up, but everything hurt. Ha! Not enough, huh? He kicked Ichigo gently onto his back. Come on, boy, you have more, don't you? He reached down and grabbed Ichigo by the shirt, hauling him up. Who the hell are you? What do you want with me? Ichigo struggled to get him to let go, but he may as well have been trying to move a mountain. Oh, that hurts more than your punches, boy. He let Ichigo go, and the boy fell about 3 feet to his feet and wobbled. I've been with you all your life, after all. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I would remember a damn giant. Ichigo snarled, clenching his fists, and swinging at the man's thigh. He hit his leather with a loud clap, and let out a yelp as he drew back, shaking his aching fist. Ha! Not a Jotun, boy. Though I suppose you're too tiny of a little shit to know the difference. Or give me an actual fight, it looks like. Thankfully, pain can be an adept teacher. He grinned nastily, before reaching down and flicking Ichigo in the stomach. Ichigo collapsed, holding his belly, and gasping for air. I suppose that's why such a tiny, little baby hollow scared the piss out of you. His body protested as he forced himself to his hands and knees. What the fuck are you talking about? Who the hell are you? He finally burst out furiously. The hollow, boy. He pressed down on his back with his boot and forced him back down, the monster as you like to call it, when you're not pretending that it doesn't exist. He eased up. As for me, I'm... Ichigo blinked stupidly. What? Whatever he had said had just been lost on the wind. Ha? Couldn't hear it, huh? Shouldn't be surprised. He groaned, cracking his back. That's a shame, but I guess you're just not ready. You're still a child. Too afraid to hear my name. What the fuck do you mean? He groaned out. How can I be too afraid to hear a name? If you don't understand, I won't waste my time explaining. Though I suppose you'll need something to call me until you're ready, so let it be. Thor. Ichigo went very, very still. That was a name even a young Japanese boy like him would have heard of. And several things he had ignored slid into place. The hammer. The lightning. His eyes started to widen to the point they may have fallen out of his head if they went any wider. Thor grinned. "I see that got your attention, didn't it?" He snapped his fingers, and a quick rumble heralded his hammer's arrival. It crackled lightly with electricity in his hand, but as for what I am, now that I can answer. The crackling intensified. "I'm your strength. Your power. I'm your instinct. I'm everything you repress. I'm your desire for victory. For violence. To protect." He raised his hammer, "And I'm sick of seeing you be such a coward." During their fight, Ichigo hadn't noticed that the scene from his memories had seemingly paused. But he definitely noticed it starting back up. He watched as the hollow continued its descent onto younger Ichigo, only this time Ichigo got to watch his mother flash to him and pick him up before flashing away. And as for the hollow? Thor threw his hammer so quickly that Ichigo barely realized it had left his hand before it had impacted the hollow. A veritable lightning storm erupted from the point of impact, thundering booms echoing throughout the land, and bright flashes blinding him. And then it was over. He didn't see a thing that happened until his vision cleared of spots. But then he started to gape, open-mouthed. Where the hollow had stood was instead a deep crater several meters wide, with large cracks ripping the earth up and lightning-like patterns around it. The crater must have been 4 meters deep, and was rapidly filling with water. The last thing he saw before the world went black was Thor's savage grin. Ichigo gasped and sat up in bed. He groaned, feeling aches that hadn't been there when he went to sleep erupt around his body, and clenched the sheets momentarily. Finally, he unclenched and began to pant. What the fuck was that? He asked the empty room, before falling back onto his pillow. He took in a deep breath and started to center himself. After a few minutes of calming down, he got up and went into his bathroom to wash his face. Only the water kept running unheeded as he stared at the mirror in shock. In the center of his forehead there was a light bruise forming. When he raised his shirt, a matching one where Thor had flicked him had also started to purple. Unfortunately, after that first night, Ichigo had gotten little reprieve from the man claiming the Norse god of thunder's name. At first, Ichigo had been able to put it from his mind. Days passed, then weeks, and then months with no sign of him in his dreams. But those halcyon days ended 3 months later, with his second appearance. It wasn't the same dream, but Thor had seemed delighted to see him. Very delighted. Which he had shown off with another beating, and if he had needed any more proof that Thor had just been playing with him in their first round, he got it that night. Thor had spent the night beating what he called bad habits out of him, snarking at his karate forms. And then taught him many more things, including some wrestling moves. He'd been shocked to discover that Thor had been a god of wrestling too. About the only saving grace was that Thor hadn't tried to hit him with what he assumed was Mjolnir. The dreams had been sporadic thankfully, with him seeing the crazy strong asshole only once every 2 or 3 months. That is, they were sporadic until they weren't. Once every 2 or 3 months had become once a month. Then twice a month. Once a week. And every time, Ichigo had a beatdown delivered that made him feel like his and Tatsuki's usual human-shaped stress balls. All of them. At the same time. The more shocking thing though, was that Ichigo began to feel stronger in the waking world as well. By the time he was just a bit over 12, he actively had to hold back against Tatsuki. Not his skill, she was extremely gifted in her own right, but his power. The first time Ichigo had broken a bully's ribs with a half-assed backfist made him realize that he was becoming far stronger than he thought was physically possible. He didn't know how it was possible, but it was quite clear that his dreams weren't really dreams. They were real. And then it got worse. Heh, look at the ass on that one. Doesn't it just make you want to go over and dash? Ichigo groaned as his eyes were forcibly drawn to the beautiful older girl's yoga pants clad behind. Shut up. Ichigo's eyebrow twitched, even as his face flushed a little bit. The lady in question must have been in her college years, and her tight shirt also did nothing to hide her body, even if he couldn't see her chest from behind. Don't act like we both don't know what your internet history should look like, boy. You started early. Thor roared in laughter. Denial of self isn't healthy. Shut up. Ichigo ground his teeth. Just because I'm not a dash, he yelped in shock as a hard punch to his arm drew his attention. What was that for Tatsuki? Pervert. The black-haired girl growled. I'm not a pervert. He was proud he didn't stammer in response to her accusation. Oh, then I suppose your eyes were just glued in her general direction then? She smirked. It's okay, Ichigo. I'll still love you even if you're a pervert. Oh, shut it. He growled and looked away, hiding his blush. She smirked in satisfaction. You always say that when you don't have anything else to say. No denials either. This is your fault, you horny lump. He growled at his inner headache. Lump? Get in here and I'll give you a few, little bitch. Thor cackled some more, and Ichigo winced. He just knew he'd be paying for that later. He shook his head and addressed his friend. Anyway, I'll see you tomorrow? He looked back at his partner, who nodded. Yeah. Later. She waved over her shoulder as she turned down the street to the karate dojo. Ichigo had stopped attending lessons, since basically everyone was afraid to fight him but Tatsuki. Even the instructors had started to feel wary of him, which made any improvement a hassle. The only real action he got nowadays was against the demon bitch in his dreams. He had his hands in his pockets as he walked off towards his home, his hair still damp from the workout he and Tatsuki had just finished. He had been barely 10 minutes from his house when it happened. What the? He yelled aloud and shielded himself with his arms, protecting his face and chest from the shards of concrete that had suddenly exploded in his direction. A large cloud of dust and grit was floating in front of him. Did a water main explode or some? He trailed off as he made out a shadow in the smoke. A terrifying shadow. And then came the sound. A horrific roar, sounding like the soul-torn wail of the damned, erupted in front of him. Ichigo broke into a cold sweat as the deep bellow seemed to tear right through him. His legs wouldn't move, and he trembled as the smoke cleared. At first, Ichigo thought he was having a nightmare again. That he was about to see the mask and body of that hamster son of a bitch that had stolen his mother away. He was wrong. The scream had blown the dust cloud away, and this beast was nothing like the one he practically knew by heart now. It had a solid body, no fur in sight, and its mask certainly did not look like a hamster. It looked vaguely like a humanoid lizard with a large hole near its navel, rather than the center of its chest. It had deadly-looking antlers and its mask looked vaguely like a cross between a reindeer and a monochrome tiki mask. It had only 3 toes and fingers and was massively muscular. It's huge! Ichigo screamed in his head. He tried to back away, but it was as though his legs were frozen. The day felt cold, despite it being the middle of summer. The beast looked right at him and roared once more, the shockwave blasting loose grit at him again. It started to charge. Move. He thought to himself, get away. He half figured Thor would have been calling him a bitch again, but the man was silent for once. He tried to run, but it was like his legs didn't want to respond. Move. The beast was almost on him and it lunged, its gaping maw opening impossibly wide and revealing that second set of teeth in its gullet. Move. He roared and finally was able to move his traitorous legs. He rolled under the bite and tumbled to his feet, watching as it crunched down on the concrete before roaring furiously and turning. Ichigo panted as though he had run a marathon, sweat pouring from his body. Unknown to him, a slight crackle of electricity was surrounding his body. His eyes, which were normally brown, were now a deep blue as well. What the fuck do you want with me? He yelled at it, finding his second wind. It roared mindlessly in his direction again and began ambling towards him. Since it was so huge, it took a while for it to build up any speed. When it reached him it was still slow, and Ichigo ducked under its claw swipe. With a roar of fury at all of the strange things that always happened to him, he unleashed a full-force punch for the first time in months. There was a large crunch as the beast's body contorted from his strike, and for the first time its roar changed. Before it had been mindless. Now it was in furious agony. Its muscles bulged as it started swiping wildly, and Ichigo made the mistake of blocking. Gah! He spat as the air was forced from his lungs, feeling like he'd been hit by a car. The 2 gashes on his back from where its claws had grazed immediately started to bleed. A second swipe had him flying through the air and landing on the pavement. He rolled multiple times before crashing into an inconveniently placed fire hydrant. He let out an agonized groan, clenching his fists and trying to get to his feet as the beast lumbered slowly towards him. He couldn't even feel any satisfaction as he eyed the deep fist-shaped indentation that was on its side. Is this it? He ground his teeth together as it started to run towards him. I can't die here. He closed his eyes and roared, I won't die like this. Ha! Better, kid. Much better. Ichigo's eyes snapped open as he stared at a grinning Thor, still a bitch though. His jaw dropped. He looked like a goldfish as he stared around himself. Where was the monster? Where the hell was he? Everywhere he looked seemed to be made of mountainous terrain. The valleys were filled with pristine rivers and surrounding vegetation, and he even spotted a forested lakefront off in one direction. Snow-capped peaks topped the tallest mountains, which melted into the rivers. The skies were mostly clear, with the sun peeking through one of the fluffy white clouds, with fewer light gray ones. It almost looked idyllic. Except for the massive fucking spires of rock that were floating in midair with crackling lightning striking them every few seconds. He gaped, staring at the formations which had to weigh hundreds of tons each, bobbing gently up and down, every few seconds getting struck by another bolt of lightning. Home sweet home. Thor rumbled, his grin not dimming in the slightest. He continued to gape, slowly turning around and looking everywhere, taking it in. Where the hell am I? You're usually not this slow on the uptake, boy. Thor boomed in laughter. Am I really going to have to spell things out for you? Ichigo clenched his fists. Can you fucking speak clearly for once? Is this another fucking dream? Where's that fucking thing I was fighting? Thor sat with a heavy thump, and Ichigo couldn't help but grind his teeth as he realized he was still shorter than the man. Thor reached behind him and pulled a bottle out, which he tossed at Ichigo. The boy fumbled with it but managed to keep it from falling. He read the label and started to sputter. Mead? Is this alcohol? He turned to the huge idiot in outrage. Aye. Thor bit the stopper off his own bottle and started to down it. Damn good stuff too. Skull. I'm 12, you asshole. Ichigo protested immediately. Bah! You modern folk are such infants. Thor waved him off. Back in my day we drank it like it was mother's milk. Fucking take a sip. Maybe it'll get that fucking stick out of you. Ass. You son of a dash. Ichigo cursed. Can you please answer my damn questions? Take a sip, boy, and I just might. Thor turned lidded eyes to him, and Ichigo growled. Asshole. Ichigo successfully popped the stopper and cautiously took a sniff. It had a pleasant and pretty sweet smell, surprising him. Cautiously, he took a small sip, and then his eyes widened. He sputtered and choked as the strong flavor caught him by surprise, and he managed to swallow. It burned a bit going down, and he started to cough. You people drink this for fun? He managed to rasp out. Ha ha ha. You get used to it. Thor downed another gulp of it. Burns nice and good, don't it? He shook his head as Ichigo death glared at him. Anyway, good fucking punch, boy. Shitty follow up, but you nailed that thing good. Ichigo stared at him, before cautiously taking another sip. Clearly he was going to need it. Thor's smile widened. So that was real? Aye. Thor nodded. And you know what it is. I've told you before. Ichigo pursed his lips. Hollow? Thor nodded again. What the hell is it? Hell's the wrong word there, boy. Not all of them are destined for that place. Thor said, and Ichigo's eyes widened. Hollows are corrupted souls that didn't quite make it to the afterlife. Something kept them chained to the earth, unable to move on. Or sometimes, they just didn't know how to move on to the other side. Ichigo's hand with the bottle slowly lowered in shock, and eventually, if someone doesn't help them move on, they stay here too long. They become filled with despair. Those chains in their chests erode completely, and they lose their hearts. Their hearts become the masks they wear as their bodies warp and leave behind a gaping, cavernous void they're desperate to fill. Ichigo trembled minutely as he thought back to the holes in both of the hollows he'd seen, and I'm guessing they're not looking for McDonald's. He quipped weakly. Thor chuffed, no. No, they're not. They're starving. He whispered, starving with hunger for what they lost. 4 souls. Anything to fill the gaping void inside of them. And the more potent the soul, the more spiritual power infused within it, the better. His eyes glittered brightly with inner lightning, and there are few souls tastier than yours, boy. Ichigo ground his teeth, because of you? Thor dropped his hand and let the bottle clink on the rock he sat on. No, boy. Because of you. I couldn't have been born if you hadn't already been special. Ichigo stared at him, before growling, fuck it. He brought the bottle to his lips and threw his head back, downing the drink. Thor burst out laughing, that's the way, boy. Skull. He polished off his own mead. Ichigo stopped drinking with a gasp, stumbling slightly. I can't get drunk in a dream, can I? If you take bruises with you, why wouldn't you get drunk? Thor laughed at him. Ichigo started looking panicked, so Thor waved him off. Bah, don't worry about it, boy. Yours is watered down. You know, since you're a little bitch. Left unsaid was that Thor had already calculated how many of those he'd need to drink to actually get plastered. Fuck you. Ichigo growled at him. They went silent, before Ichigo sighed, where the hell am I? Who are you? Thor shook his head. Are you being fucking slow on purpose, boy? He spread his arms. We're inside your soul, boy. Your inner world. Ichigo's jaw dropped. Everything the light touches is your kingdom. Ichigo stared at him in disbelief. Did you just quote Lion King at me? Ha! Couldn't resist. Thor dropped his arms. It is unrecognizable from that time, so long ago. Storms pounded these lands every single day. Black clouds blotted out the sun. Now I love me some storms. Yeah, a god of thunder probably would, but even for me, it was a bit much. The entire land, all the flowers, the grass, the trees. All of it drowned beneath unforgiving waves. Do you understand? Ichigo swallowed as his fists clenched. Mom's death. Even as he thought it, for a brief moment, the sky darkened with a dark gray cloud above them. His eyes widened. That could have been a coincidence, but it felt awfully real. It was real. Thor said, I told you, didn't I? You are a storm. And it's high time you learn to control it. Ichigo took a deep breath. I still don't understand. If this is my soul, then who am I? Why am I here? Thor asked. Yeah. Ichigo replied after a moment, and felt his stomach twist just a tiny bit when Thor let out a heavy sigh. Boy, you didn't think a regular human would be able to see spirits and hollows, did you? How many of your peers thought you crazy, all those years ago? You're about as normal as a Kirin. Thor said, making Ichigo flinch, I am the physical representation of the powers you were born with. He stood, you were born with an unusual amount of Ryuryoku. Even had you been born in Soul Society, your potential would have been abnormal. For a regular human, your potential is ridiculous. That makes you a magnet for those things. The only thing surprising me is that it took you this long to run into another one. It's a good thing I've been kicking your lazy ass into shape, otherwise that little baby hollow would have eaten you in one bite. He grinned viciously, leaning down. Course, you might have had a few more years before that happened, if I hadn't gotten involved. Our training has just made your soul stronger and stronger after all, and therefore even tastier to them. But even if I hadn't, they would have come, and you would have been defenseless. Just like you were that day. But how is that possible? Why me? What makes me so special? Ichigo cried out, his heart rate rising rapidly. Does it matter, boy? Thor raised an eyebrow. Is knowing why going to change a fucking thing? No. No. This is who you are. This is who you always were. And this is who you'll always be. The only thing left to do was move forward, or die. Ichigo took a deep breath, trying to calm his hammering heart. Then what can I do? When was the last time you cleaned those fucking ears? Thor rolled his eyes, or is fear still clogging them up tighter than a virgin's asshole? Ichigo blushed hotly. I already told you, boy. I'm your power. You didn't think I just made you tastier to hollows, did you? But I don't have any powers. Ichigo yelled back, I've never used any powers. I don't have a clue how to use any powers. Course you do. I'm fucking here, aren't I? He patted the hammer by his side. The soul always grows stronger when it is put in mortal peril. That's why I was able to bring you here for the first time, rather than coming to you in your dreams. I'm here, as I've always been, boy. Waiting to be drawn out. Waiting to be used. Lightning crackled from his fingertips, arcing to the hammer. You're a storm, Kurosaki Ichigo. It's high time you unleash it. And that little baby hollow is still slavering for a tasty meal out there. Time only slows so much in here. He grinned viciously, which means it's time for you to go and show that hollow what you're made of. Be the storm, boy. A crackle of lightning blinded him, and he closed his eyes. Before he could say a word, he almost felt the world dissolve around him. Be the storm. The hollow practically had its tongue lolling out of its jaw as it approached the down Ryatsu sink in front of it. It was most definitely salivating at the thought of consuming such a powerful soul. Though this particular hollow was practically mindless, it could have achieved sentience if it succeeded. It didn't. Just as it was lunging for its meal, Ichigo's eyes snapped open, and lightning started to crackle along his form. His fist snapped up and a tiny crackle of lightning leapt from his limb, spearing the hapless hollow through the gut, and sending it flying backwards. Had any spiritually aware person been within half a mile of Ichigo, they would have felt the crushing pressure of his Ryatsu. He slowly stood, looking at himself in awe. Tongues of lightning crackled all around his form. He examined his fingers, where little sparks arced from digit to digit. Under the skin itself, he could see his glowing veins, and almost felt like he could distinguish every little bit of blood in his body. The wound on his back was no longer bleeding, though it still left his white shirt red and torn. This feels. He. Like that, do you? Thor sounded incredibly smug. Try concentrating it on those cuts on your back. Ichigo swallowed and did as he was told, clenching his fists, and directing his Ryuryoku at the wounds with a grimace. Unknown to him, Thor gave him a hand since he was practically a baby at the moment. With what looked like a heat haze, his wounds rapidly closed. He blinked, reaching behind him, and feeling smooth skin. Oh fuck the hell yes. His eyes practically glittered as he smirked viciously. Good, your wounds are healed. Now why don't you go return the favor? Thor sounded just as eager as Ichigo had. Ichigo's eyes snapped up, landing on the growling hollow who had just managed to get to its feet, howling painfully. My pleasure. He snarled, and launched himself forward. His eyes bugged out as he crashed right into it in barely a blink, with an accompanying boom sounding like thunder. The hollow roared as it flew back, impacting the ground and rolling. Holy shit! What was that? Wahahaha! Thor roared with laughter in his head. What, the lightning crackling wasn't a good enough clue? That's going to take some getting used to. Ichigo groaned, before launching again. This time his eyes kept up a bit more since he was expecting it, and in a flash, he kicked it in its side. A massive amount of saliva erupted from its maw as Ichigo physically lifted it into the air with his kick, and his deadly smirk was back. What's wrong? Weren't you going to eat me? The hollow roared, drawing its hand back with its fist clenched. It punched forward, but it seemed to be moving almost in slow motion. Thor spoke up again. Take the hit, boy. Got something else to show you. Ichigo grimaced, and raised his arm to block. The attack, one which was stronger than the one that had left him feeling like he'd been hit by a car just minutes ago, impacted his block. And this time, Ichigo stopped it dead. His eyes widened, having not felt the hit in the slightest. It couldn't even budge his feet. Even the hollow looked bewildered. It let out a sound of surprise. Why was the tasty bug not smashed? It punched again, but this time his block knocked the hollow S over tea kettle and sent it rolling away. He pushed the limb away. Holy hell, this is amazing. And you're still just a baby. You're going to get even stronger. Thor grinned inside of him. Enough playing around now. I've shown you all you need for now. Destroy its mask. That'll purify it and then we can go home. Gotcha. Ichigo yelled back, putting his hands up and rushing for the hollow. It had just gotten to his feet when Ichigo landed a thunderous haymaker right into its side, causing it to sink to its knees in pain. The second haymaker cracked its mask, and it desperately swiped at him with its claws to try to take him out. Its claws screeched and sparked on Ichigo's skin, failing to penetrate. Ichigo grabbed its arm and bodily lifted the beast, throwing it at a wall. Whoops! Ichigo grimaced as it hit a fire hydrant and now water was shooting into the sky. My bad. He mumbled to himself. I told you to stop fucking around, boy. Remember, it's a corrupted soul. That means it very likely was an innocent one before it died. Thor said, and Ichigo froze. It very well could have been a serial killer in life, but it is even more likely it was a child. Or a kind old man. Stop toying with it and kill it already, so that it'll move on and release the souls it already consumed to the afterlife. Fuck. Fuck. Ichigo felt horrible now. This could very well have been someone his sister's age. Just the thought of him beating on Yuzu or Karen without knowing any better almost made him vomit. He flashed over with a crack of thunder and quickly pierced its mask. A scream of lightning rang out and the hollow started to dissolve around his limb. It rapidly turned into particles and simply vanished. He took a breath and sagged, the crackling electricity around him receding. Thank you, Thor. I'll remember that for next time. And he grimly realized that there definitely would be a next time. I'm sure you will. Having fun is one thing. He started to chuckle. Far be it for me to tell someone not to enjoy a fight. But make sure it's a fight and not a slaughter unless you run into one of them. Some of them are intelligent, and some of them definitely were evil monsters even before they slipped a mask on. Those? When you kill them, they'll go straight to hell. Right. Ichigo straightened up and started to walk home. Might want to get rid of the shirt. Thor reminded him. Fuck. Ichigo let out a tired groan as he ripped the shirt away. I love this damn shirt. He mumbled sadly, before unleashing his Ryatsu for the last time. It took a second for him to unleash it once more, but the shirt in his hands rapidly burned away after being engulfed with his crackling Ryatsu. Ichi nii. His little sister Yuzu gasped, with a very light flush. As she saw Ichigo's increasingly chiseled chest bare, what happened to your shirt? The little dirty blonde was cute as a button in her little apron. Kurosaki Yuzu had taken it upon herself to be the lady of the house after their mother had died. He was rather surprised she didn't have a ladle in her hand as she greeted him. Don't want to talk about it. I'll be right back. He deadpanned and sped past as fast as he could. He was up the stairs before she could even turn around, which stopped her from seeing the dried blood on his back. He washed it quickly and dried himself, before slipping a new tee on and going back downstairs. He smiled at his little sister. How was your day? Yuzu puffed up a little bit. The teachers are piling on the homework. She pouted while they heard Karen shout here over from the kitchen table. You sure you're okay, Ichi nii? Ichigo chuckled. Yeah, I'm fine. They pile on us too. And then he got kicked in the back. Ha! Ishin cackled. You let your guard down. Ichigo's eyebrow twitched. Damn it, Goat-chin. He roared as he flung the man off of him, watching as he spun comically in the air. What kind of dad attacks his son from behind? The kind who wants his son to always be sharp. Ishin declared as he landed perfectly unharmed on his feet from his forced quintuple somersault through the air. Sharp? I'll show you sharp. Ichigo dove for Ishin and executed a perfect German suplex on his father. Ichi nii. Dad. Can't it wait till after dinner? Yuzu stomped her little foot, looking utterly adorable. Let em play. Karen called over with a deadpan expression, I think you need to stir anyway. She took a sip as Yuzu panicked and dove for the stove. Karen had black hair like their father and dark gray eyes. She eyed the two men goofing around. Nice ankle lock, itchy and You might want to call Uncle, Dad. The man was crying crocodile tears as he tapped out. Ichigo pretended not to hear him. She blinked, you have another one, itchy and Ichigo blinked at the young woman floating nearby, another one? He asked, go home. I'll see what I can do tomorrow. He waved his hand irritably in her direction, though she ignored him. You two are so lucky. Yuzu pouted from her place at the stove. I can only see a blur. Only Daddy can't see them at all. You're not missing much. Ichigo deadpanned, thinking back to the mess he was now in. I don't believe in M anyway. Karen threw out lackadaisically. Ha! But you can see them. You even pointed that one out to Ichi and Karen snorted lightly, I'm in permanent denial. She said coldly as she took a sip of her drink, if I don't acknowledge them it's like they don't exist. Yuzu and the lady stared at her in shock. The lady even had a little bit of snow settling on her shoulders at the rejection. Then a timer went off and Yuzu snapped out of it, going back to the stove. Dinner is ready. Yuzu called out a few minutes later, making Ichigo realize that he was starving. He finally broke his hold on his dad and went to the table. All right. Ichigo thought as he sat cross-legged on his bed, so how do I get in there? Close your eyes and start focusing on your Ryuryoku. Easiest place is the center of your chest. Focus inward and let everything fall away. Thor instructed. He closed his eyes and reached for that power. The power he had never known he had. His body started to glow very lightly again, as his breathing evened out. Down below, Ishin furrowed his brows and turned his head in the direction of his son's room, extremely confused. He opened them again when he felt a slight breeze, and he was once again in his inner world, as they had called it. Ha ha! Welcome back, boy! Thor was grinning like usual, sitting on a big rock. Hopefully now you'll be able to make me break a sweat once in a while. Ichigo huffed, but he was smiling. I'll lay you out before you know it, big guy. Thor barked out a huge laugh, ha! That'll be the day. Ichigo fixed his face, thank you, he bowed. Bah, none of that shit, boy. Thor grimaced, waving him off, we both know it doesn't suit you. Ichigo smirked, don't get used to it. His smirk dropped, now what the fuck am I? Why do I have these powers? What are these powers? Thor snorted, well, I suppose those would be the questions, wouldn't they? He took out another set of bottles of mead, and Ichigo blanched as he caught it. Why do you keep trying to get me drunk? He asked in annoyance. He definitely wasn't drinking this one entirely this time. Yuzu and Karen would be so disappointed if he even had a hint of being drunk. To get that stick out of your ass. Didn't I tell you? Thor snickered before taking a drink, which Ichigo followed, so here's the deal, boy. I'm not exactly omniscient, so I don't have all of the information you want. Near as I can tell, you're a bit of a mutt. Ichigo's eyebrow twitched, the fuck does that mean? Well, I can tell you that what you saw that night was very real. You saw Ma about to open up a can on that nasty hollow, only for her to get hit by that light from above and then panic. I have no idea what any of that was, but I can tell you that I don't come from her. On the other hand, those glowing lines under your skin when you were fighting do. Those were some sort of defense-boosting ability, and I can feel that they don't come from me. Not directly, at least, even if I know them. I don't know why I feel that, but I do. Ichigo took a deep breath, and then a sip of his mead. He scrunched up his nose a bit as it burned going down, and he hoped he'd bloody get used to it sooner rather than later. Right, so Mom was a magical girl. Fine. Fantastic. How does that make me a mutt? Well, for one, that healing, and that steel-like skin? Thor's grin dropped and he looked serious for one of the only times Ichigo had ever seen him, them's hollow abilities. Ichigo stared. Then he shook his head minutely. What? He couldn't believe the sounds that had just entered his ears. You fucking heard me. Thor said heavily, taking another drag from his bottle. What the fuck? Ichigo yelled, how the fuck? He cut himself off, before glaring at the bottle in his hand. This is your fault. He told it, before tossing his head back and gulping a quarter of it down. Thor snorted, and then there's me. I make up the bulk of your power, to the point I manifested knowing all of the instinctual abilities you could know, even if I don't know what they're called. Unlike the other powers, I know what I am, and therefore what you are. He grinned, awaiting the explosion he knew was coming. I am a Zanpakuto, and you are a little baby Shinigami. Ichigo's jaw dropped. Shirshini Shinigami? A god of death? Thor cackled at the dumbfounded expression on Ichigo's face. But that's fucking crazy. Ichigo yelled at him. So is everything we can do. Thor deadpanned, moving on. Every Zanpakuto is capable of two main tasks, sending souls onward to the next life, and purifying hollows. Ichigo immediately perked up, so I won't have to deal with those annoying-ass ghosts? Thor burst out laughing. Ha! How did I know you were going to say that? You live in me. He deadpanned in response. Wait. He stopped abruptly. You said I was a mutt. If you didn't come from mom, where the hell did you come from then? You have two parents, dumbass. Thor replied, and Ichigo looked like he suffered a catastrophic brain freeze. No. Ichigo said. He started shaking his head. No. Nope. Not happening. Fucking Gochin? Not fucking happening. Does not compute. Don't be a fucking drama queen. Not too long ago, you believed Ma was a normal human. Thor rolled his eyes. He may act the fool, but that doesn't mean you have to be one too. But he can't even see ghosts. Ichigo protested. Yuzu has more ability than he does. I don't fucking know. I told you I don't have all the answers. Thor took another swig. But where else could those powers come from? Shinigami don't grow on trees, and they especially don't come out of the human world. Don't discount the idea just because he likes to act like an idiot. We both know he can be serious as needed. Ichigo winced lightly as he remembered the talking to he had received. I guess. He said unsurely. He shook his head. Look, this was all a lot to take in, yeah? I'm going to go do some thinking. Ha! Thor bellowed a laugh as he stood to his full height. Like hell you are. He drained the rest of his bottle and tossed it over his shoulder. You finally unlocked your true potential, so? He cracked his knuckles. Time to beat the bitch out of you. He lunged towards the smaller boy, who could only scream. God damn it, Thor. As he dodged out of the way, fine. Time to give you some lumps of your own. He was engulfed with lightning and flung himself at his Zanpakuto. He was glad he was somehow always rested despite the bruises because he sure as hell got no actual sleep that night. Chapter 2. 3 months had gone by since that fateful day and Ichigo was now officially 13. Laying in his bed and watching the sun peek out over the horizon, he could still hardly believe how his life had changed, knowing what he knew now. Every time he saw a gas main blow on TV or any weird events happening that involved random destruction, he could no longer help but assume it to be the work of hollows. They probably had nothing to do with it half of the time, but Ichigo still couldn't help but wonder. Thankfully, he had yet to be attacked a second time, but he was assuming that it could come at any moment now. In his household, things had changed as well. With both his little sisters able to see spirits, or at least their heat hazes for Yuzu, Ichigo couldn't help but fear that they would be attacked as well. He had taken to walking them to and, when he could, from school again, much to their hidden, and not so hidden, pleasure. But the biggest change of all was how Ichigo looked at his goof of a father. Every time a spirit popped up, Ichigo couldn't help but glance at the man, looking for any sign that perhaps he could see them as well. Of course, Kurosaki Ishin didn't so much as twitch whenever it happened, and the not-so-hidden glances had ignited battle in their household more than once when the man-child assumed his son was raring to go. Inwardly, his nights had changed drastically. Every single night, he returned to his inner world as his body slept and did one thing: train. Thor was an utter slave driver, and as always, completely hands-on. Ichigo wasn't certain he would ever reach the man's sheer size and bulk, but Thor sure was teaching him as if he would. Already in the waking world, Ichigo had started needing to actively suppress his power. Since the day he had first used them, his living body had strengthened to the point that, when he had allowed one of his usual delinquent idiot's punches to land just out of morbid curiosity, the idiot's hands had very nearly broken. He did feel slightly bad about that, honestly. And Tatsuki had been growing more and more frustrated as well, though thankfully not at him. She quite simply had stopped being able to keep up with him, and it showed. She was strong. Extremely so. Ichigo had little doubt that she could sweep nationals when they popped around, and could probably do so even in the male bracket. But what was a human girl compared to his Zanpakuto? Still, it wasn't all daisies for Ichigo. Quite simply, the only things he could actually use were the instinctual abilities, or the ones that required very little other than spirit power to learn. His iron skin, the regeneration, those cool glowy veins, and his electricity. Even within his own inner world, Ichigo couldn't seem to manifest his physical Zanpakuto. Something which frustrated Thor immensely, as he could get no training with his most powerful weapon. And even more infuriating was the fact that he couldn't help spirits move on without it. Some fucking death god he was. So, Ichigo trained to fight unarmed instead, learning wrestling from Thor, unlearning things karate had taught him that Thor laughed off as showy, and continued to refine himself. He awaited the day he could knock Thor's smug smirk off just once. But his early morning introspection was cut off, with a shout of dash. His eyes snapped open, and he flung his leg up, subconsciously reinforcing it with a tiny amount of Ryuryoku. He smashed his foot into his diving father's chest. The comforter shot up with his leg and almost gagged Ishin as his trajectory changed and he started to sail out the window. Ichigo whirled around and grabbed his dad's leg before he could completely fall out, leaving the man precariously suspended on the side of the house. "What the hell are you doing?" Ichigo roared angrily, "Do you want to annoy the neighbors?" "Ack!" Ishin coughed as he got the comforter off of him. "My son. To be able to defend in such a manner. I truly have nothing more to teach you." Ichigo stared at him poker-faced. "Good job, son." He flashed him a thumbs down, still upside down of course, and his teeth pinged even in the dim light of dawn as he smiled. Ichigo's eye twitched. "You can pull daddy back up now, you know?" he said when Ichigo did nothing. Ichigo gave his dad an evil-looking smirk, making him start to sweat. "Oh, I can, huh?" He reached down and yanked his comforter, chucking it back onto his bed. Ishin's face turned purple. "Wait. You wouldn't really dash. Have a nice trip, go chin." Ichigo cackled as he let go of his dad's leg and turned around to walk out of his room. He didn't notice his dad's impressive display of acrobatics. He caught the ledge of his window with his foot and pulled his way back up to the room. He had a much sharper, more calculating look in his eyes as he stared at his son's retreating back as the door closed. The sun was just now starting to truly rise, making the shadow on his face look a bit more intimidating. "Ichigo." He murmured to himself, "What's going on with you, boy?" After a moment, he shook himself and smirked, before letting himself fall. When Ichigo got downstairs, he was back to his usual antics and playing up the injury their mean son had given him to the giant blown-up poster of Masaki. "Sup?" he threw out lazily at Tatsuki as they met up. "How has practice been?" "Boring." She groaned. "They're starting to be as afraid of me as they were of you." He snorted. "Maybe you should find a new dojo then? We know that one we went to wasn't exactly the greatest." "Nah." She grinned and put her hands behind her head as she walked. "I'll just make it the best if that's what it takes." She suddenly remembered something. "Oh right. Make a turn here." Ichigo blinked in confusion. "Eh? Why?" "School is in the opposite direction." "Oh, we're picking someone up to walk with us." she replied cheerfully. Ichigo blinked again, this time in light shock. You made a friend, he grinned as she predictably slugged him. It didn't hurt at all at this point, but he started playing it up regardless. Ow. Violent woman. Asshole. She shot back, before smirking, yeah, I made a friend last Friday after class, and she's real cute. Try not to stare too much, hentai. He groaned. She never let him live down the fact that he had been staring a bit at that girl's bum. Damn Thor. A few minutes later, he was forced to bite back a growl as he was introduced to Inoue Oraheim. Odin's beard. What the hell does she feed those things? Boy, you should totally give him a squeeze. Ichigo's eyebrow twitched as Thor's voice rang in his head, spitting nothing but the truth. As much as he hated to admit it, Thor was right. For a 13-year-old she was pretty, stacked up top. Of course, the man's suggestion was summarily discarded. She was dressed in their school uniform, same as them. She had bright orange hair like him, though a darker shade than his, cut to about her neck and brown eyes. She wore 2 bright blue hairpins shaped like 6-petal flowers and let her hair fall in bangs. Hello. She said cheerfully. She really hoped to put on a good impression for the tall, scary-looking boy with bright orange hair. It was the bullying she received because of her hair color that had allowed her and Tatsuki to meet, so she really hoped he wouldn't be a hypocrite. I'm Inoue Oraheim. Nice to meet you. She gave a little bow. He inclined his head and allowed a rare smile to cross his features. Nice to meet you, Inoue-san. I like your hair. She blushed beet red, and he blinked as she immediately spaced out and started having a daydream. He likes it? He likes my hair? You all right there? He raised an eyebrow in amusement. She snapped out of it with a shake of her head and squeaked, fine. Come on. Tatsuki chuckled, having already been exposed to Oraheim's propensity for spacing out and daydreaming. We have class soon. Oh. Oraheim gasped as she started following. We shouldn't be late. Ichigo caught up quickly, and the three started talking about any little thing that came up. As they walked and talked, Ichigo's ever-expanding Ryatsu quickly began covering Oraheim as well, quite outside his control or even awareness. Even with him actively trying to suppress his growing power, what he leaked unconsciously was enough to start wrapping those he considered friends or soon-to-be friends. Almost like a protective blanket. Isshin. Kisuke Urahara was not a man easily surprised, but the sight of his old friend standing inside of his shop was certainly something he hadn't been expecting. He had very pale blonde hair and gray eyes, which were shadowed by the green and white striped bucket hat he wore. He was waving a paper fan around, which he snapped shut. Oh my, I certainly wasn't expecting to see you. What can my humble shop do for you? We need to talk. He said seriously in return, you may want to get Tessai as well. Yoruchi too if she's here. I'm afraid Yoruchi-chan isn't here, though I'm sure you knew that. He stared at the man, before smiling widely. Shall we? The three men smiled at cute little Yoruru as she poured them each a steaming hot cup of tea. Thank you Yoruru-chan. Be a dear and go keep Jinta out of trouble, will you? The black-haired girl with a weirdly shaped hairbang nodded, before meekly leaving the room. Still a shy little thing, isn't she? Isshin commented softly. Can't be helped. You know how some kids are. Urahara chortled to himself. He snapped his fan open and hid part of his face with it. So, what brings you here? Isshin let out a sigh. It's Ichigo. Has he been hurt once more, Isshin-dano? The tallest in the room, a dark-skinned man by the name of Tsukabashi Tessai, asked in a deep, rumbling voice. No, he's fine. It's his Ryatsu that is worrying me. Isshin said with a groan, he's always had high Ryatsu. Even from the day he was born, Misaki and I wondered how he could possibly have enough Ryatsu for either of us to feel. You know that. We had you two check him. Indeed. Kisuke waved his fan with a lazy grin. He's always had a lot of potential. Far more than I've ever seen if I'm frank. I imagine Soul Society would be green with envy if they knew he was born with more Ryatsu than half of their academy applicants. That's right. Isshin crossed his arms with a very serious look on his face. He had enough to actually make us worry. As he grew, so did it. But it was natural growth. There weren't any abrupt jumps in the amount of Ryatsu he emitted unconsciously. And more importantly, it was slow enough to not attract hollow attention. I'm guessing that changed? Tessai asked, while Kisuke was also staring at him with greater interest. Isshin seemed to suck his teeth for a moment, before replying, my powers aren't fully back yet. They were very much slower in returning compared to Masaki's. But I have enough that I can sense my kids' Ryatsu as long as they're within a block of the house. Well, one night Ichigo went to bed with enough spiritual power to fight evenly with a half-decent unseated officer. When I woke up that morning, he felt like a Shinigami that had just been on the cusp of unlocking Shirkai. Both men stilled at the new information. That's abrupt. Urahara said, slowly. Isshin nodded. After that night, there were no more large bumps for a while. He went back to growing naturally, if a bit faster than he had previously. He chewed on the inside of his cheek for a moment, but then it happened again, about 3 months later. Another large jump, to the level of a seated officer, even if a low one. Isshin took a deep breath and stared hard at Kisuke, and it kept happening. Again and again, with increasing frequency. 3 months ago, he came home, shirtless, according to Yuzu, and had such a large jump that I would have been happy to have him as one of my senior seated officers just off of sheer Ryatsu alone. It's gotten to the point where in the house, he's almost completely drowning out my weaker senses. Hell, I'm pretty sure I started recovering faster too. Isshin let out an exasperated chuckle. My boy is 13, and if a fifth seat challenged him today, I'd sell tickets to the ass-kicking. Urahara Kisuke was not a man to be struck dumb, but even he would admit to being completely dumbfounded by the words coming out of his friend's mouth. That's impossible. Came out before he could bite it back. He knew full well that very little was impossible in this world. He was shaking his head when surprisingly, Tessai agreed with him. No boss, you're right. Ryatsu doesn't grow like that. Not without training. We're all over 200 years old. Speak for yourself. Isshin smirked. I'm still in my youthful 140s. Tessai bit back a snort. Regardless, it takes decades to build power up. It is a slow process for all of us, and most Shinigami do not have the potential or die before they can achieve that potential. Right. Isshin agreed. Even Toshiro never grew this fast. He was 5 times older than Ichigo. It's just not normal. He had a high seat in my division, but at least part of that was his administrative skills. Do you believe he was attacked? Urahara asked. The soul being put in extreme danger in surviving is one of the few things that could explain such rapid jumps. Isshin grimaced. I do. I'm like 85% sure he was attacked by a hollow, and for the life of me, I can't figure out how he could have survived it if he did. He said gravely, I've kept as close an eye, metaphorically speaking of course, as I could on Ichigo since his Ryatsu started growing like this. He's not met with anyone to train with. Not even Ryuken's boy. I even set a very light Kido alarm in his room to see if he's been leaving while everyone is sleeping. He never leaves his room. I just don't see how he could be learning how to use his power, nor who could be teaching him. Urahara was silent, and for once he had no jovial smile on his face. I have a theory. You said it has mostly happened at night, correct? Has anything else happened? Any weird things? Yeah. Isshin said questioningly, not entirely sure where he was going with that line of thought. I suppose I've seen him with a couple bruises too in the mornings. Though that stopped after the incident from 3 months ago. Does that not seem familiar? Kisuke had a gleam in his eye. The quest for knowledge was getting him excited. Jinzen ringing any bells? Isshin's eyes widened. He hadn't even considered that possibility. After all, while spiritual power could most certainly pass on from parent to child, Shinigami powers normally would not. That was something that normally had to be taught. But how? We know for a fact that Ichigo couldn't possibly have gotten his hands on an Asachi. No, of course not. Kisuke said slyly, but that hollow that attacked Masaki-chan was certainly not a normal one. You also started regaining your Shinigami powers long before you were ever supposed to. Just a few months after your son was born if I recall. Isshin stiffened. You think that thing infected Ichigo when he was born? Urahara shook his head. Infected? No, that's the wrong word to use. You think it acted like an Asachi? Tensai exclaimed in realization. Isshin clenched his fist, having come to the same conclusion. He was about to ask if he thought Ichigo was in any danger, but Kisuke continued. Yes, I certainly wouldn't put it past Aizen to create something like that. We know he was doing experiments on hollowification. Initially, I thought it was just an experiment that got loose. One that he didn't bother corralling. Now I'm not so sure. It infected Masaki-chan, but that isn't something that hollows do. Urahara's voice was quite serious, and his mind was whirling. What if it did that, not as a last resort, but to fulfill its design? What if it was made to begin hollowification, and Masaki just so happened to have been the being closest to it when it sensed it was going to die? It is not out of the question that he created it through an amalgamation of souls. Shinigami souls in particular. He was behind the disappearances after all. That would make it remarkably similar to an Asachi if his experiments stripped away all of what made each Shinigami, well, them. Their personality. Their souls. All that would leave are their essences, amalgamated together into pure Shinigami Ryuryoku. Which he then twisted somehow and put into that unnatural hollow. Tensai spoke gravely. Isshin clenched his fist. That damn bastard. He punched the tatami mat under him. Don't be so angry, Isshin. Urahara grinned lightly. If I'm correct, then his actions have borne unexpected fruit. If he has been learning from it, then it is clearly not hostile. If it were, then we would already know it. It would have tried to devour him by now. Isshin blinked as he realized that Kisuke was right. That was a weight off of his shoulders. The question now is, what do we do about tea? This? What indeed? Oof. Oraheim fell to the dirt as Tatsuki stood above her. The summer was waning now, and they'd had a cool day or two already. The two girls were with Ichigo in their standard training spot, hoping to get some more practice in before it really started becoming too cold to spar outside. Oh-wee. Oraheim had a quivering pout gracing her features as she rubbed her backside. Unlike the other two, she was the only one wearing protective gear. You're doing much better, Oraheim. Tatsuki said happily. It hadn't taken more than a week of knowing the girl before the black-haired tomboy had started bringing her with them to practice. A week of grinding her teeth as the boys already eking into puberty leered at her friend had been more than enough, and she became determined to know Oraheim would be able to protect herself. Especially after she was forced to knock one particularly ornery boy out when he wouldn't take no for an answer. Tea thanks. Oraheim responded softly, taking off her red helmet and revealing her hair. It was now longer, reaching closer to her shoulders. Tatsuki wondered what she sounded so down about. Are you all right, Oraheim? I didn't hurt you, did I? Wah! Oraheim raised her hands and started freaking out, waving her head side to side with a silly face. No. I'm okay. Ichigo's lips quirked upwards a little at her antics. What's wrong? You're usually a lot bubblier, Inoue-san. The girl blushed right to her roots. Be bubbly? And we lost her. Tatsuki snickered, sitting cross-legged, and catching the water bottle thrown by Ichigo. When Oraheim came back to reality, Tatsuki jumped on her case again. So what's bugging you, Oraheim? It's just... Oraheim hesitated. She enjoyed having friends. After her brother's death, she had been so lonely for so long. She didn't want to lose either of them, and she was afraid that they would lose touch if they didn't continue seeing each other like this. I don't like fighting very much. She mumbled out, looking at her knees. And? Ichigo shrugged, dropping a hand onto her shoulder. She looked up, surprised to see them not shunning her the way she had expected. We're not exactly expecting to have you knocking teeth out with me and Tats when the idiots come knocking, Inoue. We just want to make sure you can protect yourself, and protect others, if you're ever in a situation where you need to. He raised an eyebrow at her disbelieving face. What, did you think we would just leave? Don't be stupid, Inoue-san. We're friends, aren't we? She sniffled in return. Ichigo leaned back. We don't exactly like the gangs that jump us, you know? We'd much prefer if those assholes would just leave us alone. He sighed. It gets really fucking annoying, but I'm not about to go dye my hair just because of some idiots and their insecurities. But. She sounded amazed, but you both are so strong, and you really get into it when you spar and when you fight. She had seen them before. They both had smiles on their faces. Tatsuki snorted, I like fighting and I love competing. She told the Orangette, I could do without the getting jumped on the street part. Ichigo lay back and put his arms underneath his head, staring at the sky. Yeah, I do as well, but it's fucking boring, honestly. The idiots who keep jumping us are no challenge at all. I keep training because I've got people to protect. Nothing he'd said was false, but it wasn't completely true either. He'd definitely started growing a love of battle through Thor, and those spars were never boring. Protecting? She sounded confused. I'm an older brother, you know? Her eyes widened, having forgotten that fact, and the older brother is always born first, so he can protect his siblings. She stared at him, completely enraptured by his words. Immediately, her beloved, dearly departed brother's face came to mind. I'd love it if I knew my sisters would always be safe. He snorted, but we all know that isn't the case. People like those idiots that jump us don't exactly grow into fine, upstanding citizens after all. She winced in response, so I train hard, so at the very least I can protect them if they need it. Tatsuki sounded somber. You remember the news a few months ago, Heim? It was horrible. The news? Oraheim questioned, not sure where her friend was going. I remember. Ichigo growled, sounding absolutely furious since he knew exactly what she was talking about. Just the idea of his sisters being targeted like that had put him in a foul mood to say the least. He had needed to leave the living room, and had immediately laid down to enter his inner world. He hadn't needed to say a word before he and Thor had been squaring up so he could bleed off that rage. 3 years ago, a serial killer was found dead near an apartment complex. Blood was pouring onto his corpse from one of the verandas above, the mother's. Her child catatonic. A few months ago, that story made the news again, because the child who had survived was inexplicably found dead, with signs of strangulation. He and Tatsuki had been brutal on the gangs that attacked them for a few weeks. Oraheim clapped her hands to her mouth, looking entirely horrified. Tears started leaking from her eyes as she almost felt her gorge rise. Not everyone is a good person. He said darkly, some people get off on things like that. Yeah. Tatsuki said, and you know that, Oraheim. How many mugs did I have to bust because they were bullying you? Oraheim winced again, or worse. She trailed off darkly. You're in the same boat as me with your hair. He clenched his fists, only they don't want to beat you up. They want to take advantage of you instead. He took a deep breath as her face flamed red, understanding his meaning. It's fine if you don't like violence. Like I said, we're not expecting you to start knocking teeth out with us. Everyone has their own reason for fighting. Either you'll find yours, or you'll at least be able to defend yourself and we'll be happy. I see. She trailed off, seeing sides to her friend she hadn't truly known before. She tried to smile, but it came out more as a grimace. Thanks, you too. She finally succeeded. As they went home, she was silent and introspective. She had a lot of things to consider. Ho! Ichigo perked up in class for once. Damn, he's big. He blinked somewhat owlishly for a moment, before going back to listening to the introduction. No, it's rare to have a new student so late into the year, but please treat him kindly. Please introduce yourself. The teacher, a balding, middle-aged man, finished his introductory spiel and gave the floor to the newest student. My name is Yasutora Sato. I am from Okinawa. Nice to meet you. He was by far the tallest student in the class, and also the most muscular. You could tell that even through the uniform he wore. Moreover, he was even taller than the teacher. Ichigo immediately knew he would be singled out by bullies and delinquents alike, and not just for his height. While he had dark hair and eyes like most Japanese people, he also had fairly tan skin. He was assigned his seat, next to Kunita Rio, and whatever entertainment the morning offered was gone, in favor of getting on with classes. Great! He mumbled to himself, starting the day strong with civics. How exciting! He heard Tatsuki snicker lightly to herself, and Orihime bit back a giggle. Ichigo was walking home alone today, Tatsuki having declared a girls' day for her in Orihime. Ichigo didn't really mind, though at this point he wondered if he shouldn't have some guy friends as well. He had loosened his school's jacket and had it hanging from his bag. It was a warm day, and it was a bit stuffy for him otherwise. Then things changed, and Ichigo's senses blared out at him. He moved so quickly he almost vanished, reappearing about 20 feet in front of where he had been. Where he had been standing, the concrete shattered. He turned and got his first glimpse of the first hollow he'd seen since that time all those months ago. It was vaguely toad-like in appearance. Its mask had bulbous eyes and its limbs were spindly with large hands and feet. It was a lurid green color, and its extremely long tongue was lolling out of its mouth. Damn, you're ugly. Ichigo snickered momentarily, before catching a whiff of it and grimacing, and you smell horrible. Got the shit end of the stick, huh? Ho ho ho, you can see me? What a surprise! You must be delicious. The toad greeted, and Ichigo blenched again. The fuck? You can talk? He pointed at it. That's not allowed, toad face. He was summarily ignored as the beast started laughing and congratulating itself on its stroke of luck. I told you some were intelligent, didn't I? Thor chuckled inside of him, though I can't say much for its actual intelligence if it's coming after you. Make it fast, boy. Or don't. Up to you. Ichigo snorted as the toad continued to yammer on about which limit was going to start eating him from while slowly prowling towards him. Well, you going to sit there and talk yourself up, or are you actually going to do something? Oh ho, the tasty bug likes to talk trash, huh? You're going to be so delicious I'm drooling. The hollow crowed, since you can see me, I think I'll play with you first. Run, little bug. Run and know that the one who will devour you is called N-. Ichigo vanished with a thunderous boom, and his arm pierced the center of its mask. I think I like you idiots more when you're quiet. It immediately fell limp, hanging from his limb. It slowly broke up into erasure and vanished. He snorted and walked over to his bag and jacket, hauling both over his shoulder once more. They're just like these dumb gangs. He shook his head, they bark louder than they bite. Ichigo rubbed the side of his head in exasperation. Man, you guys are cool. How many is it this time, Genzo? A vein bulged up on the delinquent's forehead. It's Ichiro. Ichiro. He roared, spittle flying from his maw, and you called me Hideki last time. Can't you even get the wrong name right? Ichigo smirked lightly. Sorry, I don't do well with names. Especially not side characters. Why you little? His face turned bright, almost puce, before he calmed himself and started to chuckle. Bravado ain't going to get you anywhere this time, Kurosaki. He cracked his knuckles menacingly. I got 20 boys here ta beat your ass and your bitch ain't here ta save your hide this time. The gang of thugs were holding everything from knuckle dusters to bike chains in their hands. The mass of idiots roared in approval. I'll make sure to tell Tats that you called her a bitch then. He grinned, hands still in his pockets with a singular lack of concern. I'm sure she'll love hunting your dumb ass down and tanning your hide. He cracked his neck. So 21 of you total, huh? Good to know. I was wondering how many ambulances I'd have to call. The entire gang immediately saw red and charged. Ichigo didn't even take his hands out of his pockets. Before they could even blink, 3 of them were down and Ichigo was pressing his heel into Ichiro's nose. He ducked under a swing of a chain and dropped a haymaker into the brat's jaw, sending teeth clattering before his head smashed into the grit. He dropped into a handstand and pushed off with his arms, performing a somersault in the air and crushing another one with a heel drop. That was 5 down in less than 5 seconds, and the gang was suddenly skittish. Man, if you'd like to run, go right ahead. This is boring, he said airily. You bastard. One of them ground out. He rushed forward and started cocking a fist back before he was thrown ass over teakettle by the skull of another of their compatriots. Ha! Ichigo blinked, before looking back. Sato was walking towards him, hand just now dropping to his side. His school jacket was open, revealing some of his chest as well as a golden medallion hanging around his neck. He clearly had grabbed one of the thugs surrounding Ichigo and thrown him bodily across the road into the other thug. "Are you alright, Kurosaki-san?" Ichigo grinned and clasped hands with the taller boy. "Hey Chad. Nice to see you. You're as strong as I thought you'd be." The newly christened Chad blinked. "It's Sato." "Oh, is it?" Ichigo casually caught an arm and launched a crushing punch with his other arm into the thug's ribcage. My bad. He waved it off as the thug wheezed and fell to the ground. "Thanks for the assist." Sato wasn't a very expressive person apparently. He'd been quiet and stoic in classes too. Even still, he gave him a little smile and a thumbs up. "No problem. Doesn't seem like you need much help though." "Yeah, these guys do kinda suck." They both leaned back as another went flying in between them and crushed his head between their fists. These guys are monsters." One of them yelled before turning tail and running away. "Coward." Another yelled at his retreating back. A hand clamping onto his head from behind made him stiffen, and he felt lightning race up his spine as a tremendous pressure on his skull made him cry out. "You should follow his example." Ichigo roared and threw him straight through the wooden fence. 2 minutes later, Ichigo was clapping his hands up and down as though he was getting dust off of them. 3 minutes and 46 seconds. Damn, too slow. He chided himself. Sato blinked even as he gave him a thumbs up. "I would say that's pretty fast." "Nah, Tats and I have done way better before." He chuckled to himself, making Sato raise an eyebrow, which was hidden by his somewhat long, wavy hair. "Anyway, thanks again for the assist, Chad." They again high-fived, and this time bumped their shoulders together, and Ichigo again was unaware of his Ryatsu beginning to envelop the other. "It's Sato." He repeated himself, though he was quirking his smile. "And no problem. See you in class tomorrow." He waved over his shoulder, Sato doing the same and walking in the other direction. And after that meeting, Sato had become a friend. He was usually stoic and cool, contrasting nicely with Tatsuki's fiery temper and Oraheim's bubby, imaginative glee. It was an eclectic group which confused most of their peers. They simply couldn't see what most of them had in common. And if their regular peers were just confused, the delinquents were outright furious. Ichigo had been 100% correct when he assumed they'd be picking fights with Sato all the time. Only that was where his own confusion started, down at the riverside. "Man, what the hell were you doing?" He had a clueless look on his face as he stared at the tall, tan boy. His clothes were scuffed. He had scratches on his body. And most importantly of all, Ichigo just had to save him from being brained from the back by a rock bigger than his head. "Why the hell were you just letting those two morons beat on you, Chad?" Sato had laid down on the grass, and was fingering his medallion. "It's Sato." Ichigo's eye twitched. Yeah. Enough of that, man. You were lucky I was around. Even you would get hurt with a rock to the skull." He walked over and sat beside him, Sato as calm as ever. "You're strong. Really strong. So why the hell were you just letting that happen? Why didn't you fight, like when you helped me?" Sato looked up at the sky, and clenched the medallion with his hand. "A vow." He said simply, "To not use my fists for myself." "It was a promise to my abuelo." Ichigo blinked. "Abu." "Ha? Abuelo. It means grandfather." Sato let out the barest of smiles. His name was Oscar Joaquin de la Rosa. Ichigo blinked multiple times. "And he's from, where exactly?" "What ethnicity?" "Mestizo. He was from Mexico." He let go of the coin. "I lived with him before coming here." "You said you were from Okinawa when you introduced yourself." Ichigo deadpanned. "Oh, did I?" Sato questioned, hiding a little amusement. "Oh, whatever." Ichigo waved it off. "Let me guess. Born in Okinawa, and then moved to Mexico?" That's right. Sato agreed easily. I'm assuming that coin is important then? Yeah, sure is. Sato sighed as he closed his eyes, my most precious possession. Maybe more precious than my life. Ichigo was about to say something when a cloud moved out of the way of the sun. A little flash near their feet caught his attention. The hell is this doing here? Sato sat up a little and eyed the phone. Oh, it must be theirs. Bit of a hassle, but I'll get it back to them. Don't bother. Ichigo replied and crushed it with his foot. Neither of them noticed that the phone had been on and in an active call. Anyway, you haven't exactly explained why you were just standing there. Not kicking their teeth in is one thing, but why were you just taking it? I don't like seeing my friends get beat up. Sato let out a rare, nostalgic smile. I was a terror as a child. Worse than those guys from before. He admitted, much to Ichigo's shock. I was always big. Always strong. Bigger than most and stronger than anyone I ever met, even when they were 3 or 4 years my senior. Now that I think of it, I probably got it from my abuelo. Both of my parents were tiny. And I had a temper. He shook his head, constantly got into fights just for being bumped into. Stole things. Ichigo simply gaped, simply unable to reconcile the Sato he knew with the one being described. My abuelo tried to teach me to be gentle. Tried to teach me to be kind. I always ignored it. I'm guessing something went wrong then? Ichigo asked. Yeah. Sato breathed out, beat up the wrong kids, and their parents came for revenge. My abuelo stood in front of me and took every bit of the punishment. Even at his age, he could have beaten all 3 with one arm tied behind his back. But what example would that have been? He questioned humorlessly. It was that moment that changed everything for me, and it was then that he gave me this coin. Ichigo was silent for a moment, before he clapped him on the shoulder. Look man, I'm happy that you learned what your grandpa was trying to teach you, but I think you took it a little overboard. How so? Sato blinked. What he was trying to do was to teach you to use your strength for the right reasons, not to let yourself get the shit kicked out of you, you dumbass. He laughed as Sato's sweat dropped. Retaliating when you're threatened is entirely different from beating someone's face in because they bumped into you. He didn't retaliate then because he wanted to teach you a lesson. Because he could take it. But that doesn't mean he would have wanted you to allow yourself to get your skull smashed with a rock either. He wouldn't want to see you dead, Chad. At least dodge the idiots until they get tired. You were born strong for a reason. You just have to find the things you want to protect. Ichigo straightened up and cracked his neck. Anyway, I'll let you think things over. I have to get home, yeah? Ichigo held a fist up, which Sato bumped with his own after a little while. I better not see you letting yourself get beat up anymore. He threw a wave over his shoulder as he walked away. Sato relaxed, thinking over his words. Ichigo's words and his grandfather's words were warring in his head. Only, as he thought more and more, he realized that they weren't warring at all. His abuelo never claimed that he should be a saint. Only that he be a good man, and not use his fists for his own gain. Maybe defending himself when needed wasn't going against his teachings. He clenched the coin, remembering his abuelo's words, those big and strong fists of yours, for what purpose were you gifted them? Learn about that, Sato. This amulet will help you. He breathed deeply, before letting it out slowly. Thank you, abuelo, and thank you, Ichigo. I think I may understand now. Only he never got the chance to apply his new resolve. Sato had a blistering headache when he awoke. I was careless. Far too careless. He thought to himself immediately once the grogginess wore off. He practically ignored the fist that crashed into his stomach, barely feeling it. The last thing he could remember was walking home with his headphones on before a sharp pain and blackness. Clearly they had caught him flat-foot. He took stock of himself. He was tied to a chair and had thick rope wrapped around his wrists behind his back, around his torso, and around his legs. He opened his eyes, revealing that he was surrounded. Well, awake are we? The man speaking was one of the most delinquent-looking delinquents he had ever laid eyes on. He had a nose ring with a gaudy golden chain connecting it to an earring, for crying out loud. His dark hair was styled in cornrows too. Sato flexed, and while the ropes strained momentarily, they didn't budge. They're awfully thick. I don't think I can break free. Yep. His captor was lounging on a sofa looking like he thought himself a king. Looks like this is the end of the great chat of Mashiba Middle School. How does it feel? Does it hurt enough that you need to piss? Sato wasn't shaken. He tilted his head in confusion. So if it hurts, I should piss? It'll be a while then. Sorry. Oh yeah? He grinned and stood up. How about this then? Sato's eyes bulged open as the man grabbed his medallion and yanked it off his neck. This thing's more important than your life, huh? Then I guess if I destroy it, you gotta die, right? He took his other hand out of his pocket, revealing a small set of shears. Sato immediately flashed back to that day. He could see his abuelo's face clearly in his mind's eye, holding his hand closed around the coin. He let out a deep, feral-sounding growl and the ropes around him audibly started to strain. He was gritting his teeth, all of his pearly whites in full display. Had he not been friends with Ichigo, then strain was all he could have done? But because of Ichigo, the seed of spiritual power had started to grow inside of him, and it now strengthened him. One of the ropes frayed and then snapped and whiplashed one of his captors in the jewels. He went down, screaming himself hoarse. The one holding his coin jumped back, visibly looking terrified at the sheer strength that would have required. The others started punching and kicking him, and he ate every hit without caring. Another rope snapped, whipping another in the face. Kill him! The head delinquent roared, raising the shears to his coin. And then Ichigo showed up. Sato finally stopped straining as Ichigo practically materialized in front of him, his heel digging into the side of the man's face. The two went flying, throwing up a dust cloud. Yakakini! One of them yelled. Even he himself blinked and said, Ichigo? The cloud dispersed, revealing Ichigo holding his coin and grinning at Sato, who sagged slightly in relief. The orange-haired boy pocketed it and then stomped Yakakini's face in a couple more times for good measure, before bending down and searching his pockets. Oi! Kurosaki Ichigo! What the hell are you doing fishing in the boss's pockets? Hello? 119? I'd like to call an ambulance. Ichigo ignored them, revealing that he was calling emergency services. An ambulance? One of them stuttered, Are you so worried about Chad that you're ignoring us? We'll kick your ass. Yes, I'm at the second block, under the bridge. You should probably send a couple ambulances. He kicked Yakakini again as he started to try to get up, sending him back into unconsciousness with a gasp. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. He pointed towards each of them, making them quake in rage as they realized what he was doing. 6 ambulances. He threw the phone away and then Sato watched in awe as Ichigo beat the ever-living hell out of every single one of his captors, without ever taking a single hit in return. The final one he knocked out with an absolutely beautiful German suplex into the ratty couch in front of Sato. Finally, Ichigo clapped his hands for a job well done and walked over. Man, what am I going to do with you, Chad? It's Sato. Sato replied automatically, as Ichigo casually reached down and tore his ropes like tissue paper. He rubbed his arms before accepting a hand up, and to be fair, they knocked me out from behind. With a rock. TCH, damn cowards. Ichigo spat on one of them, directly in the eye. He sighed, let's get out of here before the ambulances pop up. Yeah. Sato quirked a small grin in amusement at his friend's audacity. Anyway, did you think about what I said at all? He asked once they were walking away from the incident site. Like I said, they got me from behind. Sato responded with a slight smile, holding a hand out expectantly. Good. Ichigo clapped him on the back, but if you're still uncomfortable with it, then lend your fists to me. He took the medallion out of his pocket and put it into his friend's hand. You protect me and those I care about, and I'll protect you and the things you care about. Ichigo grinned, holding up a fist. If you'll stake your life on that coin and your grandpa's teachings, then I will as well. You got that? Sato let out a genuine smile. Yeah, it's a promise. They bumped fists. As they parted ways, Sato was lost in his own thoughts. He idly waved to a little girl waving at him, never noticing that to anyone else watching, she wasn't really there. The skies had started turning orange with the setting sun. More than a year had passed since that day, and Ichigo was now 14, along with his friends. Next to him, Tatsuki was cheering Orihime on as she sparred with Sato. The orange-haired girl had grown leaps and bounds over the year he'd known her, and that pep talk had really helped her grow a lot. Tatsuki had quickly gotten her up to the point where she could give Orihime a black belt just like her. As predicted, the girl wasn't going around busting heads with them, but Ichigo had just been so proud when a guy in their class had been harassing her, and even snapped her bra strap one day, and Haim had laid him out. Haim dodged some of Sato's punches, smiling all the while and having fun with it. She launched a roundhouse kick at him, which he blocked with a good-natured oof. Of course, merriment must always come to an end. Boom! The earth rocked, throwing Orihime and Sato to the ground from what felt like an earthquake. A massive explosion had thrown up a cloud of dust nearby. Tatsuki shook her head. What the hell? An explosion? How? We're not near any dash. A shadow started shimmering in the smoke cloud and Ichigo hurried to his feet, biting his lip, and wondering how he was supposed to keep his friends from seeing this. What is that? Orihime gasped, and his eyes widened as he snapped his head to her. The three of his friends had also gotten to their feet, mostly in case they needed to run from whatever was exploding. But they froze, eyeing the beast that had just erupted from the smoke. It was massive. By far the largest hollow Ichigo had ever seen, by about a factor of 5. Just its hand was as big as Sato. Its mask was draconic, and its body looked something vaguely out of a horror movie. Slender, lanky, and inky black. It let out a roar that legitimately shook their surroundings. What the hell is that thing? Tatsuki looked terrified and was trembling as she squared up in front of Orihime. Sato himself had his arms up, but he also looked scared. How couldn't he when it made him look small? Ichigo couldn't help but blurt, "Wait, you can see it?" Orihime was rapidly nodding her head to his question, and his other two friends merely said so, not daring to risk taking their eyes off it. Fuck. Fuck indeed. Thor sounded grim. The hell are we going to do? There's not much we can fucking teach him. Kill it first. Worry about them later. Ichigo said, but before he could act, the hollow grinned and vanished. Ichigo's eyes lit up with lightning as a boom echoed around him. He vanished and appeared in front of Tatsuki and Orihime, roaring in anger as he punched its paws. A bolt of lightning shot from his hands, knocking it back and crackling on its form. He yelled at his friends, "Stay behind me!" Ichigo what dash Sato started to ask, but Ichigo cut him off. Not now, he yelled back, as the hollow stood. My. It hissed in a sibilant tone, "Aren't you special?" The hollow started to laugh. That was a good punch, brat. I even felt that one. A forked tongue slithered from its masked teeth. Oh, you're going to be delectable, aren't you? Even your little friends smell like wonderful little snacks. It hissed, and the fear in his friends ratcheted right up, enraging him. Struggle all you want, children. Your souls shall fuel my ascension. It suddenly yelled, before jerking its hand forward and sticking its pointer finger at them. Before any of the teens he was defending even realized what had happened, a small ball of energy had charged for a bare moment at the tip of its claw and then rocketed at Ichigo. Ichigo saw it clearly and easily and could have dodged it without a problem, but then his friends would all get hit. Ichigo raised his arms and crossed them in front of his torso, tucking his head in and bracing for impact. The rapid attack smashed into him and exploded, drawing a pained scream from him. Ichigo! His friends yelled in terror. The smoke cleared, revealing Ichigo's shirt had been blown off and his shorts singed. His arms and parts of his stomach were very badly burned, and his muscles were spasming. Hehehe, the hollow crowed, "You're even dumber than you look, morsel. Tanking my bala was a bad move. It might have hit your friends, but you could have still fought. Now, I'll eat you and wash you down with them right after." It hunched over, prowling slowly toward them. Ichigo smirked, "You talk too much. Clenching his fists once more, that familiar heat haze engulfed him as his wounds rapidly closed and turned to nothing. What? The hollow froze and then jumped back. High-speed regeneration? How is that possible? Even I don't have that. Fuck you, that's how. Ichigo's lightning erupted around him, and a boom made his friends flinch as he disappeared. His fist crashed straight into the beast's gut with a sound like a thunderclap. It completely masked the sound of its ribs cracking, though even that couldn't hide the shockwave that erupted from its back. It gagged, vomiting out gallons of saliva as it was forced back. It staggered and threw another bala at Ichigo, who dodged it this time with ease, another thunderclap echoing in the clearing. The hollow rasped, "Es sonido too? What are you? Sonido?" Ichigo stalked forward. "You got a name for it?" "I just call it walking." He vanished again, appearing above it with his fist raised. The hollow opened its maw and its tongue shot out at supersonic speeds, aiming to spear through Ichigo and reel him in to be consumed in one fell swoop. The tongue struck him in the chest, and screeched as it skidded right off his armored skin. Frankly, it would have been better off using bala if it was trying to harm him. Ichigo merely spun like a top, allowing the tongue to shoot past him. He grinned viciously as his leg shot out, cracking down on its mask with crushing force. Gah, aha! The huge hollow roared in agony as not only did its mask start hairline fracturing, but the impact had forced it to bite its own tongue off. Rivers of blood splashed onto the ground as it continued to scream. It desperately swiped at him with its claws, trying more to knock him away than to really hurt him, as it was intelligent enough to realize it had bitten off more than it could chew. Its wild swing connected, and again just created sparks against his steel skin. Ichigo reared up, preparing a double axe handle, and pounding it into the ground. A series of shockwaves erupted from the impact point, breaking the ground, and smashing into the beast, knocking it off its feet and onto its back. Ichigo leapt up, and came crashing down, putting his entire arm through its mask. His fist went clean through its head and struck the ground, rocking it with another mini quake. It let out a death rattle, before starting to break apart into particles. A hollow as old as it had already gone a not insignificant distance towards its next evolution. 90-odd years of first eating souls, and then graduating to other hollows had turned it into a huge hollow. A few more years or so, or eating Ichigo, would have turned it into aminos. That meant that as it was purified, thousands of souls were sent to the afterlife. Ichigo almost staggered as he felt it. Wow. Not bad, boy. Thor definitely had a hint of pride in his voice. Not bad at all. If that thing had been active for less than 50 years, I'd eat my boot. That's a lot of souls you just saved. Thanks. Ichigo smiled. Now please save me from that. He nervously eyed his three rapidly approaching friends in dread. Ha! You're on your own for that, boy. Fuck. Ichigo cursed. Oof. He grunted, before being knocked onto his back by a ballistic Oraheim. Kurosaki Kuuuun. She wailed, "Oh my gosh, that was so scary and cool. You were all whap and bam and boom and dash." Ichigo, what the fuck was that? Tatsuki was as pale as he'd ever seen her. Sato merely stared at him questioningly. "Can't say I'm not wondering too, Ichigo." He sighed. "Let's go somewhere else." He mumbled, sitting up and casually holding Oraheim in his arms. The girl blushed in his arms as he started to walk. "Before people show up and ask questions we can't answer." "All right." Tatsuki took a deep breath. "Right. Let's go." "So, let me get this straight." A vein above Tatsuki's eye was practically trying to beat itself out of her head. "Your mom was a spiritual magical girl, and your goof of a dad might actually be a crouching moron hidden badass." Oraheim jumped in eagerly. "You have a magical sword in your soul that you still don't know the name of, but who's been calling himself Thor?" She was practically vibrating out of her skin from excitement. "The afterlife actually exists, and you're a Shinigami now." Sato looked like he wanted to take a nap. "Which means you have all sorts of fantastical powers straight out of mythology because your magic sword is Thor, but you get attacked by soul-eating monsters because of it." Tatsuki finished. "That about right?" "Yeah, just about," Ichigo said nonchalantly. When the fuck did life become an anime?
Tatsuki flipped poor Oraheim's table, revealing a note taped to the bottom reading, "For gags only."
She froze. Hey, wait a minute. She glared at him. Is this why I can't keep up with you at all anymore? Ichigo winced. Kinda, yeah.
Sorry Tats, but even if I'm suppressing my spiritual power, I can punch through solid concrete and not feel a thing.
And I fight Thor every night when I'm asleep, so.
Bullshit. Tatsuki raged, punching the carpet.
She pointed a finger at him. Teach us. Ichigo sputtered. What? We can see those fucking things too. Tatsuki didn't lower her finger, which means we have spiritual power too, doesn't it? Oh, that's right.
Oraheim smiled, starting to bounce in place on her knees.
Wait.
Ichigo rapidly shook his head. Thor, and I barely know how to teach me.
He protested. I wouldn't even know where to start or what you could learn. I'm not exactly normal.
But if you don't and we get attacked when you're not near, then we'll be helpless. Sato said softly, making Ichigo flinch. You said it yourself. Souls with high spiritual power attract those things, and just being able to see them means we're above the baseline.
Ichigo ground his teeth together. God damn it. He took a calming breath. Look, I mean it. I have no idea what I can teach you or if I even can teach you. So I'll try. He looked at all of them seriously, but don't blame me if it ends up being a waste of time. And if you're in, and it works, then you guys are all in, got it? He said sternly. Got it.
Oraheim cheered, throwing her arms into the air with a giant smile on her face. Sato merely raised a fist with a smile, before giving him a thumbs up, and Tatsuki punched her fists together with a smirk. Stop trying to change our minds. Ichigo's grin turned sinister. Oh no, there's no more backing out now. Oraheim, Sato, and Tatsuki felt a chill. You guys are committed. He cracked his knuckles. So how about we go raising that Ryatsu and see if we can make something happen?
I've made a mistake.
The trio thought to themselves in complete and utter apprehension as they remembered just how Thor trained Ichigo. That wraps up this part of What If Ichigo Had a Different Zanpakuto. New episodes drop every 4 days, so be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to stay updated. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share it with fellow fans. Don't forget to check the description for the fanfic title and author. Your support means a lot to them.
Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.